Okay, we're ready. Hey guys, I'm here. Hi, prehistoric Matt. We're having a nice rainy day here at our house. Yesterday was sunny and the day before too, but today is definitely one of those gray, rainy days. How are you all doing? See a couple of people showing up. Check on in.
They're in.
Yep, looks like we got 4 concurrent viewers at the moment, and they'll come on in as we go. Prehistoric Matt says, I'm surprised that there's internet on the back country road 30 miles from home during a thunderstorm. Wow. You're coming from a middle of a thunderstorm? Good for you. Mindy says, hello, new subscriber, excited to be here. Hi, Mindy, welcome to our live show where you get to ask me anything that crosses your mind or talk about the latest video, or you can send in questions through my email at shifrasmagicalcove@gmail.com. And if I get it before the show, I'll do my best to put that on the list and answer. So Salt Rock says, I'm good, how are you? We're pretty good today. Like I said, it's raining a little bit here, so it's kind of like a bit of a gray day, but the red-winged blackbirds were completely and totally insane. They really get the bird feeder going. Hi, Ian. And Ian's from England. So welcome from England. It's always nice when people can join us from other parts of the world. We really appreciate that. So, all right. So, Prehistoric Matt says, I have a good question a few days ago. All right, what did you come up with? Let me know what it is, and we'll see what we can do about that. I have a couple of questions I can field when we have a bit of a break in here, but so let's see what Matt comes up with. They're really specific fairies that just make shoes. I have no idea, and I don't know if they actually make shoes or if that's just a story. Canary says, hello, everyone. Um, I mean, I know I've certainly read some of the stories about that, but, I'm not sure about how accurate stories like that actually are when it comes to the different kinds of fairies that are there, unless you've met one and, you know, you have firsthand experience. I haven't met one who makes shoes. That doesn't mean they might not exist. So I have no idea. Sorry. I can only speak to my experience.
Fit me.
Yeah, if they did, it would be nice to have a pair of shoes that would fit Ian, he says. Ian Spink says, hello, have you worked with the Norse gods? I don't work with them per se, but I've had some dealings with a few of them. Thor likes me. I don't know exactly why. He shows up a fair often. Um, and yeah, so I'm cautious in thunderstorms because I have been hit by lightning, and it's not my favorite thing to repeat. So I don't want to do that again. But I haven't really been working directly with them. I do have a representation of Thor in the south, in our temple. I found a mask that is sort of Nordic. It's a wooden mask, and I painted it all up, and it sort of makes me think about Thor. So, so I guess that would be about all I have on that subject. Somebody sent in a question and wanted me to explain about when I became invisible. Hi, Ryder 3322. Nice to see you. Um, and when it happened, that was in Toronto in like 1971, I think, somewhere around then. it was sort of an instinctive thing that I did because I felt uncomfortable when I noticed that everyone on the street was watching me in the cars and, walking and everything else. And it just was like, ew, I don't want them all looking. And I don't know exactly what I did, but I just kind of changed my energy and made them, they all looked away. So, about 8 years ago, maybe, I think it was, I decided I wanted to undo that. So, trying to figure out how to undo that has been a process. It's like layers, like slowly opening myself back up to people, and I'm not sure how I'm doing that either. It is not like it's a process that I'm familiar with. It's like feeling it out and sort of dropping outer parts of my shield, perhaps. I'm thinking maybe what I did was I put up a shield and made everything like reflect away from me so that I wouldn't be that noticeable. And so now it's a process of taking down some of those shields and allowing myself to be seen.
Frank played with invisibility once.
Well, yeah, being invisible in that sense, we have a friend who wanted to be invisible because he was
His tags were out of.
right. His tags on his car were out of date. Speaking of which, we need to put ours on.
Yes.
And he didn't want the cops to see him. But how many times did he get hit?
Just once.
Just the once.
Just that one time. The first time he did an invisibility spell on his vehicle, and they had already gotten to the point where he put the zebra tags on there. Don't drive this. They put black and white stripe.
Oh, they put special tags so that the cops could tell he wasn't supposed to be on the road.
Yes, and that's when he made it invisible, and then that's when he got T-boned right in the driver's door.
So you have to be careful about that. So Mindy says, who would you say has been your most valuable spirit energy to work with? Probably my personal guardian spirit Moida, since I've known her since I was little, and she's been the most communicative. I actually channeled her for other people for a number of years, and I learned a lot through that process of doing that and sitting in that energy of being in an altered state. So she brought with the experience for me that brought me a greater understanding, a better ability to actually change my state of consciousness at will, which is really, when it comes down to it, the basis of all magic. Being able to have that control and becoming familiar with being in that state in a controlled setting. So I guess that would be the answer to that question. So let's see, Ryder wants to know how Canary is doing this weekend, and Canary says she's doing okay, or he or she. Has been the most interesting, but what else is new? Mello says, are you yourself a fairy incarnated into human form? And Mindy says, thank you for answering my question. You're welcome, Mindy. I believe that there is fairy blood in my family tree according to where my family, this body's family is from. So I don't know how to answer that question. I don't remember a life as a fairy, so I can't say for sure that I was one. But it does seem to there are some indications that the fairy bloodline runs in my Irish ancestry, since my relatives were raised at the base of the Hill of Fairy, which is one of the 7 sacred hills of Ireland. And generally speaking, in Ireland, people didn't live near those hills unless they had some kind of a connection to them. So that would be, and really, one level, it doesn't matter whether I am or not. I remember a bunch of different lives, but then we've all had different lives. And so the value of knowing that is not as great to me, I guess. Because really, living in this life is the one that we're experiencing right now is the one that's important. And people who are sort of using other lives that they may have had as justification either for their, um, I don't know, strength of position that they're coming from or laurels to sit on or whatever seems kind of like a unnecessary and potential cop out to being where they are now. If you've learned something from it, then that's great. And then if you use what you learned, then that's great. But, you know, how are you living now is the ultimate question and the one that is important in my view. So Ryder tells Canary that I'm not too bad, finished doing the Chloe thing 2 week workout challenge. It was hard and I'm glad it's over. Rest tomorrow. Oh, exercising, what fun. Mello says, amazing, thanks so much for answering. You're welcome. Ryder says, Siofra, are you earlier tonight or am I just going kook? Change the time zones. Time has changed. We are now in daylight savings time. So, yes, at 2 o'clock this morning, they put our clocks ahead an hour. So I suppose if they didn't do that for you, then it would be early. Canary says, Ryder, oh God, I tired just to commit. I tried to commit just doing 10-minute workouts every day after my breathing exercises, but because I haven't worked out for a while, but only end up doing it once every 3 days or something. All right. So you guys exercise and be good for your bodies. That's a good thing. Ophelia says, I'm sure I already know your answer, but do you have a fear of death in any way? I know I have had past lives as well, and I believe I will have another one, but it's the attachments I have here that kill me, like my son. Well, you know, the body has got an instinct to stay alive and to stay well, and when you're in the middle of a crisis, the fight to survive is an important one because it keeps you here. So when Ian and I went to Hawaii a number of years ago, and I almost drowned in the ocean, and I fought to survive. I mean, you know, I did what I could. I relaxed. I tried not to fight the waves, knowing that there wasn't anything I could do, and I didn't want to break my neck. And that was probably the biggest hazard at that moment, besides drowning, because the waves were so strong and they pushed us down on the bottom. So I spent most of my time on the bottom rolling around, and then a few seconds in between waves that came, being able to get a breath and then having to be under the water again. So I definitely was focused on doing what I could to stay here. And then I had to ask for help because when we got to the shore, I was just a foot or two behind Ian, and he was able to get his feet in the sand, but
Big toe.
just his big toe. But I'm shorter, and so being behind him, it was a little deeper there. And then when the wave started pulling itself back out away from shore, it lifted up my feet, and I knew that if I went out, I wasn't coming back. So I yelled and screamed for help, and he turned around and grabbed my arm and couldn't hold on to my arm because it slipped out because of the salt water. And he grabbed a hold of my swimsuit strap, and that was the only thing that kept me from going out to sea. And there was some guy standing on the shore, and I started screaming at him at the top of my lungs because it was so loud you couldn't really hear anything, for him to help, because I knew that Ian was just as exhausted as I was, and I wasn't sure if he had the strength to pull me out as well, and there would be another wave coming any second. And so the guy came over and grabbed my arm, my other arm, and they pulled me out and got me far enough onto the shore that I could just lay there and kind of spit out a lot of water coming out of my face and whatnot. And the guy who helped rescue me had no idea that he had just saved my life. He was oblivious, apparently, to the severity of our situation. Because as he was going away, he said, "What happened? Did she just get tired or something?" And yeah, so that was kind of weird. And I felt very strange when that happened because I knew how close I came, and I couldn't sleep very well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back under the water, and that's when I realized I had my eyes open because the memory of seeing the sand swirling in the sun was right there, and I really hadn't thought about it until then. And then the sun came up in the morning, and I really valued and appreciated the fact that there was a sunrise that I almost never saw. So, although I wouldn't say that I'm afraid of death in the sense that I know it's going to happen, because that's just the way things are, um, I'm certainly not willing to just sort of give up and let it happen. So there's always that balance. I went to see an acupuncturist after that, and he basically basically said that I'd missed out on my opportunity to wipe my karmic debt, and because I'd been afraid to die, and and so I'd missed the boat, I guess. But yeah, it was kind of weird. I told my I thought, well, if I'd just given up, then I would be dead, and then nobody would have to worry about what was going on with me. So it was a bit of a obnoxious thing to say, I thought. Anyway, he and I didn't get along, as you can well imagine. But then when Ian and I got really super sick a few years back with one of the influenzas that was going around, um, I I left my body and kept going into the tunnel, and my two guardian angels were there, and that's what attracted me to the tunnel and the light and stuff. And they kept bringing me back, and they brought me back about 3 times. And the last time they brought me back, they said that they couldn't bring me back again, so then I had to decide whether I was staying or not. So I decided that my husband would be very unhappy with me if I didn't stay. And he's like, yes, that's right. He doesn't like it when I talk about that. But I chose to stay, and I think, sometimes you do get that opportunity to make a choice. So, but it wasn't scary when it was happening. I mean, that would be the time where I was getting ready to cross over, and it wasn't in the least bit frightening or scary. So it was very interesting to experience that and be able to come back from it. So I guess that would be a way to answer the question. Um, yeah. So we want to stay when we can. Anywho, let's see where we're at. Let me go back up here to, yes, Ophelia, you're the one who asked the question. And like it would kill you if your son died. Yeah, becoming a mother makes you contemplate your own mortality. This is true. It does. And my daughter actually worried about me dying for a long time because her grandfather died when she was little, and that made her think about it and worry about it a lot. And I basically told her that I had no intention of leaving and I would do everything I could to stay. And I did. And so I'm still here. Mello asks if I've taken psychedelics, and we answered this question last week. I have. I was in the late 60s and the early 70s, and there were lots of psychedelics around, and I was a part of that generation, being born in 1950. So, and my first husband was seriously into them, so he introduced me to the whole notion. And I guess as far as legally is concerned, I could be considered insane because I've had more than 3 acid trips or something like that. I'm like, really? That's your criteria? Yeah, but I didn't care for them much when they started doing things to me. If you want to see about my experience, you can watch the video I put up on shamanic dismemberment. And that was started with an acid trip, so yeah, enjoy. So Frankie says hello. Hi, Frankie. Canary says, do you know anything about starseeds? I think starseeds are supposed to be the idea of us coming from an alien civilization or whatever and planting ourselves here in order to help humanity become more enlightened. Um, and I don't really remember a life on an alien planet. I remember all my lives here on this one. So Frankie says, beautiful outfit today. Love your sweater. Oh, yeah, this is one of my shawls that I picked up at Goodwill, I think. But thank you. Marisol says, oh my God, so glad you're okay. Yeah, so am I. And Ryder says at Canary, yeah, I hear that. I did yoga for 2 years and stopped for a long while. It was so hard to get back into it. I had to become so stiff. Yes, becoming stiff when you stop moving is definitely a common situation. Canary says it takes so long to make progress and flexibility and strength, so little time to muck up your progress, and then you still think you can do it for some reason. This happens as you age as well, because in your brain you do not feel like you are old or infirm or have joint issues or are less strong than you used to be, and having to remember that kind of stuff, like, it's annoying. But I remember, so I do it. So, one of the other questions that somebody had was about what do you do if you have to cut down a tree? Like, what can you do? And one of the things that I know about trees and the way they work is if they know that they're going to die, and they have a good idea of that if it's a natural death, then they change the direction of their nutrient flow and they actually take the nutrients that they've stored in their trunk and their leaves and put it back down into the soil and out towards the other trees that are nearby. So if you know that you're going to need to remove a tree for a reason and you have the time to let the tree know, then that's a good idea, because if you let the tree know when it's going to happen, then it knows how long it has to reverse its process and to give back its nutrients to the soil and to nurture the other nearby life forms that are around. And then of course afterwards you can use the wood for either wand making or furniture making or what have you, or for heating if that's the purpose of the wood that you have. And do what you can, because everything dies. That's kind of the way it's set up. We come here, we get a life, we continue on, we consume other life forms in order to stay alive, and then when we pass we go back into the life cycle, hopefully. So yeah, much as we love our trees, sometimes they are infirm and may cause problems, like if the wind gets too high and it crashes through your house, it's not a good, pleasant experience for anybody. Or if there's other reasons why the tree is just not in a good spot. So yeah, that's what I would do with the tree situation. So Mello says, so do you follow any specific diet like veganism? I don't. I follow whatever diet is working for Ian and I at the time. I was a vegetarian for 17 years before Ian and I got together. He has certain medical conditions that require he consume a lot more iron than the average person. And then in the beginning, when we first got together, we didn't know what his food allergies were. So at the moment, we are eating meat. And, it's like some people decide to do it for different reasons. And I'm not opposed to people doing whatever they need to do to survive. Let's see. Go back up here a bit. Ian says, are trolls a type of nature earth spirit? Well, they're a type of fae, I believe. And I've seen some trolls when I was seeing the fae when we were at that cabin with the power spot that's in southern Oregon. So yeah, there are definitely trolls out there. I'm not sure about the story about trolls, like not being out in the sun and turning to stone, or asking for money to get across the bridge, but I've definitely seen things that I would consider trolls. So Mello says, have you ever felt the heartbeat of a tree, or rather like a push of energy? Well, I definitely feel the spirits of trees, and all of my wands are like living wands. They've been cut from living wood, living trees, and I've communicated with the tree, and in some cases the tree is the one that gave me the idea to take a piece of wood to make a wand from it. So we have a communication process, and I had a tree reach out to me once when I was extremely depressed and crying after I was dissolving my second marriage. And it was a wonderful and remarkable experience that this energy from this tree in my backyard just reached around and wrapped itself around me and tried to comfort me. So I guess that would be yes, would be the answer to that question. And it helped me to realize that people are only a part of the life energy that's on the planet, and we're not alone. And even when we don't have other people around us, that doesn't mean that we have to be alone, because there's other life energies that are out there that are quite willing to begin the process of interacting and communicating with us on whatever basis we're willing to do. So yeah, trees are very important. I love the trees. So Tam Miranda says, how can we recognize our spirit guides when they connect to us compared to any other spirits? It's a good question because it's not necessarily easy for everyone to do. I know about Moira because, like I said, she'd been there since I was little. And then when I started channeling, she talked about her relationship with me and who she was in my spirit history or what have you. But really, when it comes to figuring that out, your best approach is to get to know yourself as well as you can. And spirits will feel different depending on who they are and what they do, what their job entails. And when you get good enough at that, you can actually get a communication from them in order to find out. A lot of times people think of their spirit guide as that inner voice inside of them that gives them some important piece of information that they may need, a warning of something that might be coming, a push to go in a certain direction, So everyone's relationship with their spirit guide is going to be slightly different, some more verbal than others, depending on you and how you communicate and how you receive information. But if you focus on just becoming the best version of you that you can be happy with, then you're going to be doing the work that you need to do in order to make that connection with a spirit guide. And yeah, that would be the best advice I can give to anybody for that, I think. Sarah says, very appreciative of your and Ian's videos. Thank you. You're welcome, Sarah. Ophelia says, back in January, I was on your live chat asking you something because my father was in the hospital. I had a very strong knowing that he was not going to make it, but I kept trying to ignore it. Then you said something along the lines of sometimes no matter how many spells you do, what is meant to happen is going to happen. I knew right then and there that he wasn't going to make it. He passed away a few days later. You sent me the clarity I needed. He's been the most magnificent spirit guide I've had. Well, I'm sorry that you went through that, but I'm glad that you were able to get to a place of acceptance, because there are certain things we can't control. And I'm glad that what I said was helpful. It's one of those things you never know for sure. So thank you for letting me know that. I appreciate that. Canary says they're talking, Canary and Ryder, having their own conversation. Ophelia says, we're really having a big death talk today, aren't we? Apparently we are. Sometimes it's in the air, but see, spring is coming soon. This is the end of the death season, so maybe that's why. Because the 20th is the spring equinox for us, at least in the northern hemisphere. And so, it's like it makes some sort of sense to me. But then also what we're living through right now, and there's death around us, and on the news all the time, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're slowly, hopefully, coming out of it, and going to come to a point where we're getting more back to normal. But we definitely have been faced with this for a while. It's a year now since the beginning of the lockdown in the United States. So it's, we've had a lot of shadow work to do, all of us. Some people do it better than others. That's just the way that goes. The writer says that she's sorry that Ophelia had that loss as well. Emma Ray says, "Hi, love. I just started, and yesterday I set up my altar. I'm so very excited. Thank you for your guidance." You're welcome. I hope I was helpful. Apparently, I was helpful. It's always good to know I'm being helpful. Mary says, "Nah, what are trolls going to do with money?" Yeah, I don't know. Though I could see them using raw gold, or people giving them raw gold centuries ago for safe passage, kind of like leaving honey for Faye. Yeah, I don't.
Nowadays, the weakness is Jerry's.
Ian says nowadays their weakness is Ben and Jerry's, so give them some ice cream and they'll let you go. Sarah Gleddy says, "I go out every morning with my dog at sunrise. I know he sees friends that I cannot. I will continue with my daily hello and hope that one day they feel comfortable to respond." Yes. And animals see spirits much more easily than we do, for sure, because we've been trained out of seeing them, for one. And they have better eyesight than us. They see more visual range than we have, as far as, lower and higher and that kind of thing. And dogs can sometimes get upset with some spirits, and cats generally just don't care what they're up to unless they're doing something to the cat, like, picking them up and tossing them around, at which point the cat's not going to be happy. But I did have a case like that where cats were being thrown around the house, but there were so many cats. I can sort of see, I think that was actually a poltergeist, the old woman who lived there, and she had a friend moved in, so she had her cats, and the other woman had her cats, and there were like 20 some odd cats in that house or something. It was crazy. So if it was the old woman, who I suspect was being the poltergeist, and she was kind of a cranky person, and she didn't like the cats being around, then I could see that she threw the cats, and they wouldn't have been happy. But anyway, you just never know. Mello says, "What are your thoughts on the vaccine, if I may ask?" Well, I think it's wonderful that we have the ability to do that. Vaccinations have saved more human lives than anything humans have ever done in the history of the world. So I'm grateful that we have science. I'm grateful that they know how to make the vaccines, and I had my full vaccinations. I've gotten both of them, and so I'm at this point as fully protected as I can be from medical science as far as that goes. I do not believe the conspiracy theories. I don't think that there's a chip in the vaccines that Bill Gates wants to track us with, considering the fact he already has our phone number. I don't think anyone needs to put a chip in us at this point. So, Frankie says, "Any plans for spring and Ostara?" Well, yeah, I'm just going to do something basic since we're still kind of, in quarantine, as it were, or at least just our family unit, just Ian and I. But I scored a free-range organic turkey a while back at the store, so I think I'm going to thaw that out during the week and cook that. And so we'll have ourselves an excitingly wonderful meal probably on Saturday the 20th. Since we still, at this point, can't get together with friends and family, still waiting for more of the people that I know to actually get vaccinated and stuff like that. Ian still can't qualify to get vaccinated yet. So we definitely don't want to be mixing it up with groups of people. So that's, just at home and just doing our thing. Probably if it's nice, I'll work in the garden. And I've got some naked ladies is a lily that I pulled out of the backyard last fall and put in buckets, and a bunch of them are like putting out greenery. So I'm thinking I'm going to plant some of those through the front of the house and get in some of my other flower gardens and stuff, and get ready for whatever we're going to do with our raised beds and stuff that we have, because we started doing a little vegetable garden last year for the first time in a while. I haven't had the time or the space for one at this location. So, Ophelia, thank you, loves. Yes. Ryder says, do you know of any trinkets, things you can make, or rituals to help in moving home? Moving home as in moving your home to go somewhere else? You'll need to clarify that a little bit. Mindy says, do you have any advice for finding the on-off switch for telepathy? Oh yeah, that's a good one. I have that issue. It's slowed down, but I just do not like to be in other people's heads. It's hard enough in my own. I so totally get it, because I've had that problem my entire life, and it takes a long time to figure out how to make the right type of shields in order to stay out of people's heads. I have, like, at this point, I can control it most of the time. Being able to be by yourself for periods of time helps a great deal, because then you're more aware of what your own thoughts are, because that's one of the key things to stopping that telepathic connection, or recognizing it when it's starting and being able to put up a boundary. So that's always, like I said, vital. Number one, get to know who you are so you know what your own thoughts are and what they feel like. And then you can start to distinguish between other people's intrusive thoughts and your own. And then, the sacred tree meditation that helps with building up that shield, learning how to put up your own psychic shield and filter out other people's energy. And then there's a way that I've developed that I, generally speaking, ignore the information that I get sometimes from other people as like, this is a privacy issue, and I don't want to take advantage of knowing what someone else is thinking unless they're thinking something that could harm me, in which case I'm very much aware of what they're thinking, and that comes right through. So I sort of have filters, I guess, that I've developed. It can help to wear silk. That can help to keep other people's energy out of you. But practicing creating those psychic shields and doing those exercises are probably the biggest thing. At different times in my life, I've not been able to live in the same place for very long, because I would move to a new location and it would take sometimes months before I would start to hear everybody again, because I have to adapt to a new location. And at some point, I'd be walking down the street and I'd actually be able to hear the inside of people's heads and what was going on in their houses. And then I would move to a new location. I didn't realize it at the time that that's what I was doing and why, but in retrospect, that seems to be pretty clear. Getting out in nature helps a lot, and getting in touch with other forms of awareness that don't have the same kind of thoughts that people have can help too, just because it gives you more of a range of things to assist and understand how your particular ability is working. But yeah, it's not an easy thing to be a telepath. It's annoying. And then when people know you're a telepath, they expect you to always know what they're thinking, which is also annoying.
But then they get frightened when they find out it's true and run away.
Well, yeah, there's that as well. People like the idea of this stuff being real, and then they meet someone who actually is real. They're often turning around and running the other way just as fast as they can. I don't know how many people I've helped because they've asked me to, and then they've never spoken to me again. And that's been it.
Because you've succeeded, of course.
Yes. I don't know why they held that one for review. Okay. So Mindy says she'll be moving as well. So Ryder is moving to a new location, property place. Okay. So I guess the first question for Ryder is, do you have magical space in your current location? And if you do, you need to take it down and deconstruct it so that you don't leave it for the next people, energetically speaking, because not everyone's going to be comfortable with or capable of understanding the energy they might encounter, like our temple here. I mean, historically, like churches are deconsecrated and so forth when they stop being a church, and it's the same idea. So if you have a space that you've used a lot that's indoors and in the house or in your apartment, wherever you live, you're going to want to undo that. So think about stuff you might have put on the property to protect you, etc., and whether you think it would be something that could cause an issue for someone else. And then if there's like a specific energy in the property you want to take with you, then think about that as well. So if you want to take the energy of that place, like a grove of trees nearby or something like that, you might want to find something from that to take back and to take with you to your new location. If you're looking for things you can do to help you find another place to live, that'd be a whole different subject. So I know it was a couple weeks ago somebody said that you can help sell your house by putting the statue of a saint upside down in the ground. I can't remember which saint, though, since that's not my path. Was it St. Thomas or something? Well, with the promise that once your house is sold, you'll dig it up and turn it right side up.
Kind of things. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to make you uncomfortable till you take care of this, I think is the whole approach on that one.
They might not appreciate that.
Well, that's what I said at the time. I'm like, well, that sort of harkens to the do what I say or I'm going to send you to the ninth circle of hell kind of thing, that the old magicians used to do, which often backfired on them.
Probably be closer to always backfired on them, but
eventually I think they would always backfire on them. Well, I'll have to take some pictures of my gardenophilia and put it up on there if I remember. Just keep bugging me about it. Canary says, thanks so much to Ryder. Mindy says, great advice. Thanks so much. We are moving to 100 acres out in the boonies. Perfect. Oh, nice. Yes. Mindy says to Canary, I personally know so many of us farmers have been run out of our small community. It's now a city, and I work with the BLM and the Mustangs. Need property, none left here. Yeah, we have the BLM here as well. Ryder says, that's a good idea. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to help to move. It's happening all over our state. All right. And this is probably actually a good time to move because of the changing of the energy, coming into spring, which is about new beginnings, right? So Frankie says, I just moved from a house to an apartment, having trouble adjusting to so many energies around and so close. Any tips out of the ordinary cleansing work to do to help? Absolutely. I would put mirrors facing outward on the floor, on the walls that you share with other apartments, and on the ceiling if you have someone above you. And you visualize that those mirrors are like sending back the energy and thoughts and everything else of, reflecting back into where it belongs instead of invading your space. That would be one thing I would do. You can put in things in the corners of your apartment that would help absorb and ground out negative energy. So like obsidian, smoky quartz, black tourmaline, black spinel, something like that. Tourmaline and spinel both will help to keep your space clear of negative entities. So if there's a ghost or a negative being of some kind wandering around, it will not go into your space. And yeah, it is quite an adjustment. And then you you can cast a circle, make your wards around your space, so that you have defined boundaries of your magical space. So you could figure out where the cardinal directions are, cast do a evoking pentagram for each element, and do the ceiling and the floor as the spirit, and sort of visualize that you're creating this internal sphere of energy that is yours, and define that as yours, and that other people's energy is not allowed in. That's part of setting magical boundaries. And so that would be the things off the top of my head. Do you have any ideas? Okay, no, not right now. So Mindy says, any advice in getting the telepathy to work with Mustangs? I can work with their energy in general, but communication beyond that is not there.
Well, and watch out with what happened with me and our cat too. So
Okay, yeah. So Ian had an experience with our cat where he actually put himself into the cat and became the cat
I
to,
really wanted to contact the cat.
and then discovered that the cat's view of itself was definitely not his view of the cat, and it was a bit of a shock.
It was like it was well, it really was. It was alien. Like
Yeah.
so, you can have that, but if you really make contact, watch out for that potential.
Well, and I accidentally terrified a dog once, just trying to calm it down using telepathy. So you don't always know what the reaction is going to be. I was trying to get to this woman's door, and she had these two dogs, a Doberman and I think a German Shepherd. And I was trying to like stay calm, show no fear, and I was like, I looked directly at the German Shepherd, and and put out this, what I thought was this calming, reassuring energy. That that dog screamed and turned around and tucked his tail and ran away from me like I had just lit him on fire. It was sort of a surprise. So you don't know for sure exactly how they're going to respond, but practice it.
Responded in non-human ways, of course.
Yes, because they're not like us. They're different. But yeah, so one of my friends at the time said that she thought that was because the dog did not expect to find me in its head, and it was just incredibly startled by the experience and decided it was the best thing is to get the hell away. So that's what it did. But experiment with it, you know. The people that work with animals on a regular basis, they find ways to make a connection. I've been watching a bunch of zoo shows on the Disney Channel lately, just as a break from everything, and they make some pretty powerful connections with the animals by understanding their behavior and what their needs are, and not trying to impose our idea of how they should act upon them. So stay open, see what happens, and if you come up with a good idea, let us know. Frankie says, thank you so much. Yes, you're welcome. Let me know how that works too, if you remember. Mindy says, wow, good to know. Thank you both. Yes, you're welcome. Ryder says, if you had a ghost in a property you moved into and were going to move again, can the ghost move with you to your new property, or are they bound in some way? Well, that's going to depend upon the ghost. Now, some ghosts will attach themselves to people. Earthbound spirits can sometimes do that, and that's not a situation you want to encourage. So again, it's going to depend upon your situation. If they start to attach to you, then you have to figure out how to deal with it, because moving doesn't necessarily help. If they're attached to the property, then moving will get rid of whatever they're doing on the property and won't be an issue for you anymore. Yeah, so it depends. Not knowing the specifics, it's not much I can say besides that, I think. I'm trying to think if anything else comes to me. Some spirits are definitely ghosts are definitely stuck where they are because they're bound to it or to an object. And that's the other thing. It's like a spirit can be attached to an object, and then if someone picks up the object and takes it with them and moves it somewhere else, then the spirit goes with them. So it's going to depend on what you take and what's going on if you have one of those, if that's the question. Canary says, I had a cat that freaked me out that I started to talk to me. I didn't know they could do that. I'd wake up head, just be staring down my third eye. Oh, he'd. Okay. I'd wake up and he'd be just staring down my third eye. I paid attention to him. He knew things, especially about people. I think that animals are often much more aware of the energy of people than we give them credit for.
That's because they don't have all these thoughts with language interfering.
That's true. They're just sort of raw receptors without the distraction of our language stuff. Canary says that Ryder, yes, they can if they have a cord attached to you. Got to burn that cord off. Visualize purple flame washing any cords away. Ophelia says, animal magic is the greatest. They so far more superior than us. Ryder says, okay, thank you. We've become good friends. Would not mind them moving with me. Well, if you're good friends with a spirit, then you might want to actually help them to cross over if they're an actual ghost, because they're sort of stuck in their progress right now, regardless of the positive relationship you might have with them. Think about the fact that if they haven't completed the death process and moved to the other side, where they can process the life that they've had and then come back or continue on or whatever, then they're stuck. And so helping them to move on is a good idea if you can help them with that. I won't go do a paranormal investigation where people don't want me to cross the spirit over, if I find one, because I consider it sort of like an indentured servant, even if they have positive energy. So, all right. All right. Apparently I got a frog in my throat. Haha. So, what should we talk about now? With a star coming, thinking about the things that you want to take with you from the shadow work through the winter season and leave in the shadows as you go forward is always a good idea. Althusa says, hello, sorry for being late. Well, there was a time change, so we might get a number of people coming in late because of that. So welcome, Althusa. And planting something new. Just feeling that shift of energy as the light becomes stronger than the dark up here in the northern hemisphere is, becoming aware of that shift in energy and seeing how the plants are changing around with the leaves getting ready to unfurl. This would be a good time to actually potentially see some nature spirits working on the leaves and the trees and the flowers and things like that. So meditating outside this time of year is pretty productive, I think. Catherine Leslie Fay says, blessings. Hi, Catherine. Nice to meet you. I don't remember seeing your name before. Is this your first time on our show? Yeah, so Ryder says, I'm loving those beaded bracelets you are wearing today. Oh, yes. I almost forgot I had them. I have my black tourmaline on today, and this is my cryo praise, and this is a different types of agate, I believe. And this is an amethyst bracelet and some blue chalcedony or chalcedony. I'm never sure how that's supposed to be pronounced. Oh, and I have a crystal in my pocket that I brought in. Where's my pocket? Yeah. I brought in a piece of selenite. I've been sleeping with this the last 3 or 4 nights. I often use selenite for aura cleansing. It's a nice way of sort of clearing up any stuff that might be stuck in your aura that you don't want to have, and you can just, get rid of it and get it out of there. And of course, these are my emeralds and rubies. I love these things, sort of Mars and Venus together, sort of balanced energetically. And this is my prayer box. Yeah, Tibetan prayer box. It's got a bunch of rocks in there. So, Canary says, I want to buy some more crystals. Any recommendations for something that will help wake up any abilities I have that I may not have tapped into? And Julia says, hello, this is my first time. Glad to be here. Hi, Julie. Well, the selenite is a good one for a lot of reasons. For one, it can help with the issues that we've talked about today, actually, like getting rid of other people's thoughts and helping to clear your own mind and clearing your energy. It's kind of, I think of it as sort of like solidified light. It's got life energy, life force, light energy sort of thing in it. And it charges up anything it's near. It'll charge up the natural tendencies of any stone and cleanse it. So it works really well in place of having to put your stones out once a month to bathe in the full moon, or put them out on your lawn to bathe in the sun, or sage them or whatever. A piece of selenite is a replacement for all of that. And I have a nice big chunk next to my bed on my nightstand, and I put my crystals on it. So after I've given them a job or a task, or I'm learning and becoming acquainted with them or what have you, then they'll continue to get charged and cleansed by the selenite that's there. So it's a good overall crystal. Amethysts, of course, are good just in general because they're calming and soothing, and they help open up the third eye. They help to, increase your senses and that kind of thing. If you're needing to keep people out or block energies out, the black tourmaline, like this black tourmaline bracelet I have, I like to wear this when I go shopping because I'm out in the middle of who knows how many people with or without COVID. I've worn this bracelet just to try and keep their energy from leaking into mine. And especially if you're around someone who's like a psychic vampire or a sociopath who likes to damage your energy because they enjoy seeing you crumble, a black tourmaline is a good one to wear for that. And so is the black spinel. So, yeah, crystals can be very helpful for a lot of things. Raven Moss says, hello, I'm new. Question, are people taken by the Fae in a physical body or only astrally? Can some Fae visit our world and pretend to be us so they can experience our world like angels do sometimes? I don't believe that people can be taken by the Fae in a physical body. So I don't believe that the stories about changelings is real. I don't think it ever was. I think that is just a misdirection and propaganda that the church came up with to make people afraid of spirits that they didn't approve of. That's my personal opinion. I don't think anymore that they have physical contact with us because our energies have moved apart so much as far as our worlds and energetic barriers between us and them, as far as that goes. I suppose it's possible that they could visit our world and pretend to be us. I don't think that they would need to do that to experience our world because they're a part of our world. They have their own interactions with the world all the time. I mean, they exist here just like the animals exist here and the insects and everything else that's there. They're a part of reality. Not just, they're just a part of reality we often don't experience or encounter. And they have their own work to do and their own concerns that are not necessarily our concerns. They think we're funny looking when we are startled, and they can enjoy that. Some of them that I've met. But let's see. Ophelia says, "Wow, I've been on a selenite binge lately too." Yes, yay, yay for selenite. It's a good thing to binge on. Adeline Stowe says, "Hello, hi Adeline or Adeline. I don't think I've seen your name on my list either, so welcome." And Ryder says, "Hello." Ravenmoth says, "Thank you very much" to Ryder. But that's a good question. Yeah, so I think it was around this time of year that I actually saw them wide awake in broad daylight with someone else in the room, and they saw them too when they came into the room that I was in. And they seem to be attracted to my energy. Maybe they like selenite as well. At least the little ones that came in first. The bigger one that came in afterwards was clearly trying to like get them back to their job, whatever their job happened to be. Apparently I was a distraction. But you know, historically, witches and the Fae have had a working positive relationship. I had someone just the other day send me an email and ask me how they could give back a present from the Fae because they'd heard that accepting a gift from them was like bad and you didn't want to do that, and how did you not take it? And I don't have an answer for that because I've never not accepted a gift from the spirit, whether it was from the Fae or from a tree or from a rock or, you know, some other being that happened to be out in the woods at the time. If they think that they want to give me something, I figure that there's a reason. And, you know, I accept it graciously as it's offered. And I think that that whole dialogue is recent in as far as the I don't know who started that most recent way of looking at the Fae and everything that they do as being a trap, because I don't see it that way at all, and I've never experienced it that way. Of course, I am familiar with their energy and that they've been around me since I was little. I've even had other people see them around me. Yeah, so it's a interesting process. Adeline says, "I was on the last live stream, but I got here late. I was the one who said you seem familiar to me." Oh, okay. Canary says, "When I saw a fairy, it seemed to be physical." Well, I think that when we see them, they would appear to be physical. Certainly the little things that were flying around my room seemed like they were physically there at the time, until my energy shifted and then they disappeared, because then they were back. I was back fully in mine physical reality. So, and you know, when I've seen them, they seem physical. Actually, I think I had 3 visitors a while ago that came into my room. 3 gnomes, or gnome-like guy. They were all male. They had beards and wild hair and wrinkly faces and big noses, and they were standing next to my bed looking at me, and one of them said, "Can you see my face?" And I said, "Yes, I can see your face. So what's your name?" And then they left. They didn't give me their name. They just wanted to know if I could see their face. And I'm like, okay, I saw your face. What now? So I'm still waiting to see what comes next. Canary says, "Just Christian fear-mongering propaganda." To be honest, I think so. I think that they're still trying to do that. Sometimes they like to get on. I mean, our local library here, when we first moved here, they kept losing all of their pagan books because the Christians would take them out of the library and then never bring them back because they didn't want anyone else to read them. They were saving us from ourselves, you know, so we wouldn't be contaminated and whatnot, because they are so much smarter than the rest of us. So Raven says, "Thank you, Lady Siofra. I wonder, with the world rising in vibration, if we aren't going to establish a closer connection with the Fae again." Are the Fae interdimensional? So yes, I think that there's that possibility that as more of us waken to our more than just physical body realities, that we may be seeing more of them. And who knows, maybe we will get back to a time when it's just normal to see them walking around doing their thing. We'll see what happens, I guess. But in the meantime, working on yourself is the key. If you want to have anything to do with anything out there, you got to know who you are, and you got to know how to set your boundaries so you don't get taken advantage of or harmed or whatever. So, be careful out there. Canary, a writer says that Canary, very true, yet again, testimony to their existence. Yes, if something isn't real, there's no reason you have to actually warn people about it, do you? It's a good point. I like that. Adeline says, what state are you in? Oregon. I am in Oregon. On the coast of Oregon. And Trini T says, yay, I made it in the live. Hi, Siofra. Hi, everyone. Hi. Hi back. I'm so glad you made it. Trini T says, Siofra, it was a typo earlier. Okay. Wherever it was. I get lost. You guys confuse me some days, or I confuse myself. And Alan says, oh, cool, I'm in Colorado. The Witch of the Meadows says, hi. Hi, Witch of the Meadows. How are you doing? And what's going on there? Oh, you misspelled my name. See, I didn't even notice. So, it's okay. It's not that easy a name to spell. It's, doesn't make sense. Julia says, Oregon has been one of the places I've dreamt about living, actually. The forest is wonderful. Well, yeah, it's not as dense and isolated as when I lived up in northern British Columbia, up in the Kispiox Valley. There's a lot more people, but it's a small town that I'm in, which suits me because, too much energy having to deal with all that stuff and all of the anxiety. I mean, I find it changes, like the energy in this community changes on the road when I drive day by day. A couple of days ago, everybody except for me was driving like a maniac, like zipping in and out of traffic. We don't have that much traffic, so I'm not sure why they think they need to be in a rush, but it's kind of interesting to watch those kind of waves of energy contaminating other people around you and being clear and staying, in your centered spot so that doesn't happen. So Mindy says to Adeline, that is where we are moving from Utah to Colorado. Cool. Frankie Gore says, I'm in Colorado too, currently in a huge snowstorm. Know any magical things I can do with snow? Well, snow is water, so anything you could do with water, you could do with snow, I would think. Build a snowman? Have a snow fight? They can be magical. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Melted snow is distilled water, so it doesn't have any minerals in it. So that might be something to consider. You could probably melt some snow and do some kind of a cleansing with it. But don't drink too much of it because unless you're someone who has too many minerals in your body, too much drinking of melted snow is bad for humans because it leaches out the minerals in your body, because water has its own balance. It wants to have a certain amount of things in it. And if it lacks it, it will try and put those things back. Just as an aside, for an emergency thing to keep yourself alive, it'll work on the short term, but not on the long term. Can you make moon water with snow? Well, if you gather the snow that's been in the moon, I guess that would actually be moon water, wouldn't it? Do you have any tips on finding a good psychic? No. Oh, sorry. Blue Bee Gale says that they're caught in the same storm, so there's a bunch of people from Colorado, Witch of the Meadows is in north central Florida where it's hot already. Aerosol says, do you have any tips on finding a good psychic? And the answer is no, because I don't use psychics. And, okay, so there's this thing called the Cassandra syndrome that I have. And people ask me for answers, and when I give them the answers they don't like, then they ignore me. So I have, there's not much I can do. That's Cassandra was this Greek woman who was cursed by the gods to know what was coming and be cursed to tell people about it and have them never believe her, and they went and did it anyway. Of course, that is the curse of every mother who has a child and watches them do something they know is going to turn out badly, or a father, I suppose. Yeah. You have to let them do their own thing. But yeah, psychics and me don't get along in particular, and I don't have any questions. So, my understanding is that most people who are looking for psychics are trying to find out what was I used to be in a past life. Am I going to get a new mate? Should I leave the person I'm with? Are they cheating on me? Will I have any children? Should I move? Am I going to get a new job? And these are all things I think you can take care of yourself and make your own choices and decisions about. So, yeah, that's just sort of one of those things. Canary says, at Adeline, for God's sake, when we react that way to the Bible or anything similar, we get an exorcism. Okay, let me go back and see what that was about. Oh, when we act like that, making moon water or finding a psychic. Julia says, at Adeline, I mentioned Ostara in one of my classes, and my teacher was, what's that? And I was like, oh boy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can tell that they haven't been educated on the alternative religions and practices that are existing right next door to them all over the place. I had a client who was a Mormon who decided not to be a Mormon anymore. So I thought, great, she's talking about getting her name erased from the book and all this other stuff. She said something to me, and I says, well, no, I'm not a Christian. She almost fell off my table. She was in such shock. Apparently the idea that there were people who weren't Christians was such a foreign concept to her that she couldn't compute it. It was like her brain shut down completely. So, yeah. Ian did a report when he was going to the community college on the kinds of prejudice that pagans get in the work environment, and his teacher was actually kind of surprised to find out all that information. And so were we. I mean, we are still an
It's really so prevalent.
There's a lot of prevalence prejudice against paganism. I have my uncle, who's only 4 months older than me, put up one of those stupid memes on Facebook that said, we need to bring God back into the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever, and say amen if you agree. And I said, this is a country with freedom of religion, so you can either believe in one God, many gods, or no gods. It is like, come on. Let's stop this kind of rhetoric, because it's just separation. It separates us into these different groups of people that are battling against each other to cause conflict in order to try and see who is right and who's better and whatnot, which is...
My God is superior to your God.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm sorry that happened. But, it's the way it is. Raven Moss says, yes, always be safe. Thank you again, and hello and blessing from South Africa. Ah, another person from South Africa. We have someone else that comes in every so often from South Africa, so welcome. I know it must be pretty late there. Adeline says, I am so sick of people telling me witchcraft isn't a thing. I'm so close to yelling Jesus isn't a thing.
So you stick to your mythology and I'll stick to mine.
Yeah. The Witch of the Meadow says, I can relate to that syndrome. Well, it's not like you're hiding it, right? You're calling yourself the Witch of the Meadow, so I think that the cat is out of the bag when it comes to that. Canary says that, Adeline, if it isn't a thing, why are they so scared? Yeah, it is a good point. Again, you don't have to warn people about something that isn't real, and if you're scared of something, it's because on some level you think it is real, and yeah, all that stuff. Either that or they're just afraid of anything that's not them being different. Let's see, I think they said the exorcism thing was about the paragraph I wrote. Yeah, it was about the girl who wiped down her desk. Julia says, religion really is about the individual, just always do what makes one feel connected. Well, right, and I have, my personal policy is I judge people by how they act, not by what they believe. Because you can say you believe anything, but if you're acting like an ass, then you're an ass. Doesn't matter to me what you think you believe or what you say you believe. If you're crossing a boundary, then I have to put one up. That's what I have to do. It's like, it's not about your professed belief system or what have you. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that one. I don't know why. Ryder says, beats me why people can't allow others to do what makes them happy. Is it at the end of the day God-given freedom of choice and free will? It's supposed to be. But in reality, people project so much into the world around them that anything that isn't like them makes them have to question who they are, I think. I think that's part of the fear of anything that's different, is like they have to evaluate their life, their choices, their background, their childhood, their religion, how they were raised, what they know, what they think they know, and letting go of things like that seems to be a chore for a lot of people. Adeline says, I kid you not, it was a full moon, and I was getting my witchy type stuff, and my father told me less than 1% of the population were witches because they figured out that it's not a thing. Yeah, well, even some witches don't like the word witch. It's funny, really, but it's true. It is a label, but I think it's a worthwhile one to reclaim personally. And I always knew I was a witch before it was a popular thing to be, if that's a thing. It seems to be a thing. I mean, there's a whole cottage industry that has grown up around the idea of selling a beginner witch an entire kit of stuff that they say you have to put on your altar, for example. And you know, the selling of crystals has become like huge big business out there. It's so, you know, they've commercialized what we're doing, which on the one hand means it's become more mainstream. There's more shows that have it in it, as it casually mentioned, and stuff like that, which is probably good for public education. But on the other hand means that they're also trying to dilute it with whatever they think is going to work to make them a buck. And yeah, so at this point, sometimes finding out what you need to know is difficult because there's all that layered stuff that society is now stuck on top of it. When they saw that it was popular, they're like, all right, let's take off. You give free will, then you tell what to do so you don't lose it, and if you do use it, you'll burn in hell. I said show. It didn't want to show it. Google or YouTube is funny. All right. Ryder says, beats me why people can't allow others. Yes. And Prehistoric Matt says, people just want to be in groups. It all comes from Australopithecus, when man were monkeys and chimpanzee troops fighting each other for land. Runs in the family. In our genes, quite possibly. Adeline says, I kid you not, I was full moon and I was getting my witchy type stuff, and my father told me less than 1% of the population were witches. Canary says, hardcore religion was made to control people back in the day and get rid of anyone with power, but now the people who wanted to do that are dead and the followers didn't get the memo. Yeah. Well, actually, the followers probably still are trying to do the same thing in some cases. Yeah, I'll give you free will, then tell you what to do so you don't use it, and if you do use it, you'll burn in hell. Well, actually, and you can't trust your own intuition. That's one of the biggest ones that really pissed me off, was like, you know, the devil can do wonderful things and disguise himself as an angel of light and heal people and everything else, and if you're stupid enough to fall for his crap, and then suddenly he reveals himself and says, oops, guess what, I'm Satan. You're going to go to hell no matter what. And the only people you can trust are those people that are like on the in and are dedicated to God and can intercede on your behalf. Yeah, that's one of the things I like about paganism. It takes the control out of the hands of a specialized group of clergy and gives it back to people. Although, like we've talked about before in paganism, there are some cult-like things that have popped up here and there. So you still have to be aware of boundaries and make sure that you're actually comfortable with whatever it is that's going on. So Adeline says, which sounds kind of strong, but I love that label. Well, what's wrong with sounding strong, right? Canary says, those packs are so BS. Right. Oh, the packs that you can buy. I love Halloween witches, though. Don't you love big pointy hat and black cat on brooms? Well, I have a pointy hat that's got purple all over it. I put big purple flowers and stuff on my pointy hat. Blueberry says, hi from Berlin, Germany. Whoops, come back here. It moved. Do you have any advice on how to lose fear of the unknown? I want to open up to energies around me, but end up being too scared that something bad or uncomfortable is coming through. That's a very good question, actually, because fear of the unknown is normal survival tactic for humans. So what I would do would be to create a controlled situation where you open yourself up, but you're in control of how far and how long. So if you want to do that, you definitely don't want to do any mind-altering chemicals. That includes alcohol or anything, because you want to have full control over being able to stop the process. And if you have a physical process that started, you're sort of bound by its laws of breaking down, etc. So if you have someone that you know that you trust, doing it in a group can help, because that way you've got feedback from other people. It's less likely that your own mind is just going to take you on a trip and you're going to get lost in your own thought processes. It sort of, keeps things more real. And meditate, do some stuff, and get to know yourself again. Always comes back to that. And having good boundaries. You need to know if you're dealing with anything that's in a spirit form, you have power, and you have power over it in the sense that it can't do anything unless you allow it to happen. So if you say, go away, leave me alone, don't touch me, I don't want anything to do with you, then a pure spirit has got to accept that instruction and do it. But you have to know that natural authority is in you when it comes to that. That's because of the 5 elements that we contain. But yeah, my husband was afraid of the dark, and we went into caves and turned out all the lights. And he asked me why I thought he did that, since he was afraid of the dark. And I think it's because it was a controlled environment, a closed environment. And you get yourself into a place where you know where everything is, and he was in charge of the light. So if he heard something, he could turn the light back on and check it and make sure that it was still safe. And it gave him an opportunity to experience the dark in a controlled environment where nothing bad could happen. So that would be how to go about helping with that. And Julia says, something that I really like about Wicca is that there's no rules. All that's required is you do good and believe that what you put out will return to you. It's really refreshing to me. Yes. And that's one of the things Christians don't like about it, is they perceive that there are no rules, but it's not actually true. Ethics are something that come from within. And if you don't have ethics, then you're not doing it right anyway.
It doesn't mean you have to get them from a book somebody wrote down artificially.
Right. Ethics are things that happen in the moment, and you make the choice each time you do something. You're making a choice that has how you're going to act, react, respond, and then the consequences are yours as well because of that. And it makes you have to think on your feet, for sure. Charity Ferguson says, hello. Hello, Charity. Ryder says, pissed me off. I love it when you swear. It's so truthful and innocently playful. There's something about it that makes me giggle. I appreciate that. Sometimes it's what you need to say. Yeah. So, Blue 8 Gale says, I recently moved to a 14-acre property. Where would like to remain for the rest of my life? Okay. Where you would like to remain for the rest of your life. Do you have any advice on bonding with the land and or the spirits who already reside there? Putting out something for the potential land guardians that might be there, putting out an offering where whatever seems appropriate for where you are. If you work with sage or grow your own sage, sage always seems to be a good offering. In North America, Apache tears is a good offering for a land guardian. But there'll be more than just a land guardian. So walk the acres that you have, become acquainted with the individual personalities of the different kinds of trees and things like that that are there, and sort of evolve a dialogue with them would be what I would do. Doing meditations at the base of a tree is a good way to get to know a tree. And using the roots of the tree that goes down into the earth is a good way to get to know the quality of the land beneath the tree and around the tree, because they communicate with each other. There's a network of communication fibers that go through a forest and go through the ground that when you meditate in that spot and allow yourself to sink down into it, you can start to connect to that energy and allow yourself to go outward along those routes to connect with the nature of the land itself. And by becoming a part of the system of the land and the roots, then it will automatically find ways to communicate with you. You just have to pay attention, I would think. Marisol says religion really is set up to control. Adeline says, at Blueberry, I remember when I started all this, I was crying. I was so scared of the Fae. I suggest looking into what you're scared of and how to prevent anything negative happening. I carry around salt. Whatever works. Prehistoric Matt says, why do ghosts usually get active when it's dark? I've never heard of a ghost throwing a beach ball on a hot summer's day. Well, actually, there are some who have done that, but generally speaking, the reason why you notice ghosts when it's dark is because you're still and you're not distracted. And then they can see you better because you're not moving, you're laying in your bed. And if you're a clairvoyant, you show up like a beacon on the other side, and if you're a beacon that's not moving, then they can find out where you are, and they can follow the beacon and say, what's that? Who's that? What's going on? Because it looks a lot like the light that you use to cross over to the other side. So I think that it's not a matter of whether they're active or not active so much as whether we're distracted or not distracted by our environment. So that's part of it. Looks like we're coming up on our hour and a half. Canary says, when my abilities picked up, I was so scared of seeing things, but when I did see things, I was not scared at all and was just amazed. Not a single piece of fear in me. Yay. What is the fifth element? Marisol asks. Spirit. And someone already answered that. Canary says, spirit, I believe. Yes, spirit is it. Ryder says, the lovely signet ring on your little finger, does it have any significance? Oh, I didn't even know you could see that. This is actually our wedding ring. This is a clada. It doesn't fit on my other finger anymore. So it's the crown, the heart, and the hands. And so it means fidelity, love, and there's a third thing I can't think of. Togetherness, because it's got two hands reaching, on the heart. It's become a very popular symbol for love and friendship. It can be different things. So we'll pretend that this will fit, and I'll show you this briefly. So if you wear a clada and you wear it upside down with the crown going up like that on your right hand, it means that you're looking for a committed relationship. You're putting that out there to the universe. If you find a committed partner and then you turn this around on this hand with it down, that means that you're engaged basically to that person, and then when you're married, you wear it on your other hand, even if it, although I can't get it all the way down, my fingers got different shapes or sizes or whatever. But that would be Ian and I liked the idea because of my Celtic background, I guess, of using this. And amethyst is one of my favorite stones, so this is an amethyst, so this is my wedding ring, I guess. And I find it funny when I'm watching shows where they're always looking like, well, they're not wearing a ring, I guess they're not married. And I'm like, I hardly ever wear my ring. That doesn't mean I'm not married. What is this? So yeah, that's what that means. And I just wanted to come today, so I did. All right, guys, before anybody asks me a question I just feel I have to answer, I'm going to say goodbye because it's an hour and a half now, and I guess I'll see you on the 21st after Ostara, so all have a lovely celebration and get out there and, interact with the planet wherever you are.
Thanks for watching our channel.
Yep, Ian says thanks. Okay, Adeline says that her friend and her are both witches and their favorite hobby is to draw pentagrams on people's desks and pretend to do spells in the middle of class. Yeah, you're just yeah. Okay, guys, bye. That was good though. Freak 'em right out.